Hello and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host Chris Branch. Now, this is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one particular subject. And today we're going to talk about a subject that's become very popular, especially after the pandemic and working from home. And that is the idea of a 4-day work week. Now, in theory, it might sound great, but we want to kind of delve into it a bit more because where before it sounded like almost like a dream thing to say, now because of AI, all of a sudden, if we become a lot more efficient with AI, this actually seems a reality. So, Chris, initially, what's your thoughts on this 4-day work week?
I've seen it go badly, and so I think it has to be asked if it's wanted, because not everybody feels like they can cover off all of their 5-day work in 4 days yet, and that's because AI is not able to help them very much yet, or they just don't have the skill to do that. I've also seen it where people work 12 hours, 4 days a week, where you're doing just as many hours as you would do in a 5-day week, except it's much more stressful because it's packed into 4. And so it sounds in principle like a brilliant idea, yet it can be screwed up so many times, apparently.
Yeah, definitely. And I was speaking to someone about this last week because they do a 4-day work week. And I said to her, I was like, wow, that sounds great. And then she said, yeah. And I was like, okay, there's a but coming on. And I was like, what's the but? And then she said, pretty much what you said. She was saying that what tends to happen is by Thursday, you're rushing to get everything done because you're not going to be there on Friday. Mm-hmm. So we end up doing over the week. It's not technically it's 4 days, but then what changed is the hours. So you're almost adding an extra 2 hours to every day. So rather than the 9 to 5, it's 9 to 7 or 10 to 8. Or what actually happens a lot is you work 4 days, but that Friday where you're supposedly off, you're working. So actually it doesn't really work. You might as well just do 5 days. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't work, and I'm sure there's organizations out there that's managed to get it working, but this is kind of from a conversation I was having from someone who's firsthand experiencing it, and they work for a relatively big association.
Yeah, totally resonates with the same conversations I've had too. And, in principle, again, it does sound like a great idea, right? Like if everyone could work 1 day less a week, especially those with families and those that would opt to have a long weekend so that they could have a day with each other, because when the kids are daycare or whatever, then you may be able to have 1 day with your loved one and stuff, and that may mean a lot more than a 19-year-old who would just go party or whatever on the weekend. They're not bothered about having Friday off. So I think like everything, like working from home, it's a choice thing. You don't want to enforce it on everyone, and you shouldn't make it mandatory. It's if it makes sense for you, that would be really good to offer. It would be a big bonus to go work at a company that had that flexibility, actually, if you required it.
But I think there, it's working from home versus 4-day work week. I think with a 4-day work week, it's like compulsory.
Yeah, right.
With work from home, it's based on trust. Like I'm a big fan from working from home. If you want to come into the office, come into the office. Like I kind of like that hybrid. But it's from what I hear in people, it's the trust thing. Where if it's a 4-day work week, like the employer can say, look, you're working from Monday to Thursday. What you do on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is up to you. But we're doing this because you need to make sure you do X, Y, and Z in those 4 days. However long it takes you, it's up to you. And because another reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because I was actually reading something, and South Cambridgeshire District Council is testing the idea. And the reason why they're testing it is because of AI capabilities to make it feasible, And now this is what's interesting, and this is a guy called Mr. Membury who works in HR and corporate services there. He said that the reason they want to do it is because the standard way of working they think it could happen because of the standard way of working as people were taking advantage of AI. So it's going to become a standard 4-day work week because of AI.
Mm.
Now, this is the
Now,
interesting bit. Sorry, before we jump in,
yeah, go on.
this is what the his bosses essentially said. So
Mm-hmm.
when his bosses is the government, essentially, they were telling them to abandon the scheme, like abandon it. Like they just don't want this to even be tested,
Wow.
because imagine if it worked.
Mm.
That's the thing. Like, be careful what you wish for. It might actually work. If it did work, it's going to affect a lot of other businesses.
It will, and it might have a knock-on effect. I wondered though, does that mean that the people get paid 4/5 of their wage? You know,
No, full wage.
oh, so it's just the
Yeah,
same wage. So it really does benefit the employees, in which
yeah,
case, it'd be a very attractive place to work. And
yeah,
yeah, that type of thing can set stuff in motion.
yeah,
Like the reason we've got a 5-day working week is because of the industrial period.
mm,
And before then, it wasn't really a thing. When everyone was farming, everyone sort of worked in their own time and tended to their own needs. And it wasn't so mass production for everything.
yeah,
But then as soon as we got into the industrial era, everyone's expected to do a 9 to 5. And that makes sense. But I think society is slowly moving away from that.
mm,
For example, the value that you can bring to people online in 1 hour might be much more than in person in 2 hours. And
yeah,
I think that's what businesses want, is value brought. And so
yeah,
if that's the metric rather than purely mechanical clocking in and clocking out hours, which is so monotonous, it
mm.
means nothing. Someone could just sit there asleep at their desk for 8 hours a
yeah,
day.
yeah,
It means literally nothing. So
yeah. But the other thing as well is, how well do they know AI? For them to be at a
yeah,
point where they
right.
can do 4 days a week because of AI capabilities, how well do you know AI? Like, what
Well, I'll
what is
tell you
AI
one
doing,
thing. I'll
for
tell
you?
you one thing. As a Cambridgeshire man myself,
Yeah.
I am quite proud that the Cambridge district of business
Mm.
is probably one of the most foremost AI places in the UK.
Oh, nice.
So it may be that those chips and stuff that are manufactured there may have informed the local council about, being further ahead than other councils.
Yeah.
So if anyone, it's not surprising to me that Cambridgeshire Council or
Was the
South
one that,
Cambridgeshire was the
yeah,
one, yeah, even
yeah.
above London,
Mm.
honestly.
No,
So
I don't think it can happen in a lot of London, because if you think about it, work
yeah,
from home is bad enough, because
exactly.
by working from home, transport costs, they'll lose all that money from
Yeah,
transport. They lose all that money from like local
yeah,
cafes
yeah.
and restaurants, etc. Like, there's a lot of money that will happen. So I don't see it happening in big cities, but in smaller places,
Mm,
I can see it being tested. And with AI capabilities, I think the question is okay, well, how do we use AI to do X, Y, and Z? That's going to be like the
right,
learning curve. There's a huge
definitely.
learning curve for it to be normal. And I think that when it comes to a lot of organizations that are thinking of, that's even contemplating this,
Mm,
because it sounds great as a headline,
hmm.
but then it's the practical way. Forget the whole like less people are around, etc. This is more from a practical way. If you look at it from an AI point of view, how do I use it? What
Mm,
is if it goes wrong? Who is
mm,
in control of this? Who do I speak to? Like, it's just the actual delivery of it.
yeah.
That's the whole transformation in itself.
And
You
it's
know?
hard with AI because it's so much less predictable than the telephone systems that councils introduced a few years
Mm,
ago. It became unviable for councils to employ a call center to just answer everybody's calls. So
mm.
every council put in place this like terrible phone system that everyone hates, where it's
Mm.
like press number 4 to get through to the garbage disposal,
Yeah,
press
yeah.
number 5 to get through to the HR team, and
Mm.
what have you. So AI is going to fill that gap and make it better for people to interact. But in the meantime, it's going to have some serious potential issues as
Yeah,
well.
teething issues. And when,
Yeah,
from a council point of view, people, they don't have patience. We don't have patience, especially for
exactly.
certain services.
Exactly.
It's like we want it to work immediately, for good reason as well. So I think it's always going to go down to efficiency versus effectiveness,
Yeah.
and that's what we're gonna see here in this potential 4-day working week. And as you said, 4 days may mean actually more work, more pressure, less time interacting with people, because you've got to get things done in 8 hours or 10 hours rather than you've got an extra day to do it,
Yeah.
you know. Or it could be we've got 4 days, we can get everything done, because actually the amount of work that we can do always could be done in 4 days rather than 5. And then we can just have a longer weekend, which is what everyone really wants.
Exactly.
So in a nutshell, it might sound like a good idea, but in practice, even with AI, will it be more of a hindrance than a help?
We'll soon find out.